Not long ago I did a video with a bunch of different secret interactions and hidden items that can be found within World of Warcraft Classic, and people seem to really enjoy it. And the entire world of vanilla is not short on secrets and just things which are really easy to miss unless you go looking for them, or in some cases you know where to look in the first place. So today I'm back uncovering some of the lesser known sides of vanilla World of Warcraft. As always, do let me know if you knew about any of these or whether you found anything new, and is there anything that you would have added to this list? But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Boot.dev. Boot.dev is a platform that aims to equip you with the skills to forge a career in back-end development through interactive lessons and learning. It aims to keep learning more interactive and goal-driven by bringing in features such as experience, achievements, and even leaderboards to keep you motivated to progress. Boot.dev offers the tools to get fully on board with the Python and Go programming languages. It does this through hands-on learning, where you're going to be writing tons of your own code so that you can really get a grasp of the fundamentals from the basics onto more advanced lessons. On top of that, all the content is free to view and watch in guest mode, and there's even a 30-day no questions asked refund policy. So even if you're interested in just checking out how Boot works and want to see more before you know if it's for you, there is very much the option to do that. You can click the link in the description below and use my code WillE to get 25% off your first payment for Boot.dev. That's 25% your first month or your first year, depending on the subscription that you choose. Many thanks to Boot.dev for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. Let's start off with one that you'll probably know about if you're on the Alliance side, but maybe not so much on the Horde. Around 7 AM server time, children gather together in the upstairs of a house next to Mirror Lake. These children are Dana, Aaron, Cameron, John, Jose, and Elisa. And the odd thing is here how they all move upstairs together and then form what a lot of players have speculated to be some kind of pentagram, and then in an almost demonic way stand in this ritual formation, strangely shuffling about and just being a bit unsettling. It doesn't help that some Blizzard developer decided to put some seriously spooky music in this house, so whenever you walk in it, you just get the feeling that something is wrong, and then you go upstairs and see this, and you just don't really want to be there anymore. In fact though, this allegedly wasn't meant to be some kind of reference to a horror movie or anything of the sort, but instead an inside joke between different development teams. And the names of all these kids formed Blizzard's dungeon department employees, and they added these spooky sounds and evil references just as a part of this inside joke. But they must have had a pretty funny sense of humor, because if you accidentally run into this place in game, it's gonna freak you out quite a bit. Next has to be one of the most hidden quests that's available within the game. For one of the larger reasons is that it is Horde only, and the reason this quest is so rare is the item to start it just has an extremely low drop rate. But if you do manage to pick this up on a regular playthrough without needing to grind for it excessively, it does lead to a fairly good quest chain. So it's a quest item called the Flayed Demon Skin, which is looted from members of the Burning Blade in Desolace, and it starts off a quest to investigate the demon threat within the zone. After doing your investigation, collecting several items, it then has you finally defeat Lord Azrithok, an elite, as well as Juggar Grimrod, an Orc Warlock, who are both found towards the south of Desolace. You've probably seen these two NPCs a bunch when you're questing in the area, and everyone's just trying to avoid them and not kill them for a change. So if you've ever wondered who would actually want to kill them for a quest, this is your answer, but it's Horde only, and the drop rate to actually get on the quest is really bad. Let's move over from a Horde exclusive thing to an Alliance exclusive thing. You'll have seen the staunch Dwarven Guard Mountaineer Pebblebitty. She's found in southern Lochmadan and is guarding a gate which is under lock and key to get into Searing Gorge, and she's particularly keen in her work that nobody is going to be getting into Searing Gorge under any circumstance possible. She is a dwarf with a serious attitude, but there are some extra interactions here which you have probably missed. If you go to her first of all before killing the elite in Searing Gorge to start the quest to get the key, she will actually give you a tip-off of where to find the NPC, saying there's a lady almost almost as tough as her in the gorge, and if you bring her some proof, she will see what she can do about getting you a key. But when you go and slay the beast and bring the proof back to Mountaineer Pebblebiddy, well, it's just not good enough. She straight up doesn't believe you, and you have to take the horn and go all the way to Ironforge, get it authenticated, and then come back, and then she will give you a key. And even then she's pretty reluctant about giving you the key. However, since Blizzard knew they made this NPC a pain to deal with, they very much anticipated the player may be a bit rude to her. And if you go and try that emote out, she's gonna have a few extra words for you, saying you're pushing it, she's gonna beat some manners into you, or even she's about to go medieval on you. Just a bit of a fun extra interaction with an NPC, which you may or may not have known was there. Next is a real quick one, but it's always a fun one to know about if you haven't seen it before. But if you look into the cockpit of a Goblin Shredder, you can see a picture of one of the main characters from StarCraft, Sarah Kerrigan, the Queen of Blades, right on the panel at the front. And Blizzard love to reference their other games within their other games all the time. In fact, they even reference some of their earliest stuff possible. The three dwarves inside of Alderman aren't just an optional boss for the Horde and a bit of flavor text for the Alliance, but they're also referenced to a much earlier title. This was all the way back when Blizzard was known as Silicon and Synapse. And that's to one of their earliest games, simply known as the Lost Vikings. But that's not the only Easter egg here, as the two key pieces you'll assemble from next to the Lost Dwarves, as well as from defeating a near boss, are called the Shaft of Sol and the Amulet of Nekev. And if you spell it out a bit more clearly and reverse their words, you get Lost and Viking backwards. Oh, and then the set piece just afterwards where you put the staff together and then you put it in the hole which summons the light beam across the miniature city to summon the boss. This is a rather similar scene to an Indiana Jones film in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Can't really show it for copyright reasons, of course, but if you look it up, you'll see what I mean. There's a reference within a reference within a reference here. Classic Blizzard. Next is one which you will have heard in part more than likely. The extra audio in the Undercity throne room has to be one of the most famous Easter eggs in World of Warcraft. And if you haven't heard this before, you're in for a bit of a treat here. But even if you have heard it, I think there is more to it than you've probably heard. And I find that people may not really know that the sound and world design in World of Warcraft, the mmorpg, both mimic the infamous scene of Arthas's return home to Lordaeron to a greater extent than what you'd think. So let's take it from the start, towards the entrance of the Undercity. As you enter, the bells which once rang overhead, letting all know that the prince had returned, now lay silent and broken, with one of them being smashed into the ground. And the ambience itself here is an uneasy mess of ringing noises with voices mixed in between. This honestly wouldn't sound out of place in Silent Hill 2. You cross the area with the bells into the main open pathway, where the folk of Lordaeron would have watched over from the rafters with cheer and applause lighting up the air. But when you cross over it now in the Undercity, the cheers almost fade into a boo as you progress across your path towards the final room. And as you look down, you can still see the petals which rain down upon Arthas as he made his return that fateful day. As you approach the final door, the cheers bizarrely resume after being a boo as he walked through the central area. It's almost like that moment Arthas pauses in the courtyard to reflect before carrying on. It's like here he's being encouraged by the crowd to do what he's about to do. And finally, the famous throne room voices from the past, where echoes of times long gone can still be heard as clearly as ever, and King Terenas' blood still remains on the floor. This was definitely an epic moment within the RTS games, and it's good to see so much of it recreated here in the MMO. That isn't all for the Undercity though, as just in the main courtyard outside, there's seemingly nothing there. But if you were to send off a few AoE attacks, you're going to find yourself quickly under attack. That's because there are a bunch of level 50 or so ghosts in this place called Unseen. Just be careful if you're on a hardcore character here, don't go randomly spamming AoE, that's going to be a real fast ticket back to your starter zone. There is in fact another place with invisible ghosts in the game at Ravenhill in Duskwood. Here the ghosts closer all over the buildings that circle the areas. As with the ones in the Undercity, them being level 50 and in a relatively safe zone make them quite ideal for farming soul shards on warlocks. I know when I used to play on a PvP server, I used to go to Ravenhill to farm shards before raid all of the time. I totally didn't end up joining AV and going to farm the mine for a bank full of shards. That would be very irresponsible. Next I have a 2-for-1 for you, and this is one which I just kept doing digging on and finding more and more information about it. So first of all, we have a gnome on an island by herself, just secluded with no real purpose in the game. Her name is Winky and she's off the southeastern coast of Tanaris, whose only dialogue includes words such as, "Mind rubbing some lotion on my exposed areas?" Not the kind of dialogue you'd find in WoW today, that's for sure. She has been there since vanilla existed and has just kind of been chilling on her island forever and ever with no real purpose or rewards within the game. It's just a gnome having a good time, and who can blame her? If we were then to go off into the coast, into the sea, far into the fatigue zone, sort of just south of where the big circle is on the map, you'll run across a small gnomish ruin, which people often call Gnome Atlantis. It's a bunch of mechanical units, machines and houses which are leagues under the sea for no real good reason. And as with Winky, despite being a cool little thing in the game, they didn't have any purpose. But, and I'd be willing to bet these two pieces of content went the longest in the game between being released and actually being used in one way or another. Anyways, 12 years later, after both of these pieces of content were in the game, they finally gained a use at the start of Legion. As an engineer, you're sent to Winky to uncover the origins of the now famous Blingtron bot, a reoccurring item for many expansions now. It turns out that Winky's father was the creator of the bot, and his workshop was lost at sea when the tides rose up and submerged it. Do you want to guess where this is going? So you swim out to those ruins which have been in the sea in a fatigue zone since vanilla, and you recover some vital schematics and continue onwards on your quest. Talk about finally finding a way to fit some content into the game. Absolute props to whichever Blizzard dev remembered about this one. But I just think it's fun, and it does show how there's so much extra stuff in vanilla which could have a use eventually, even if it takes 12 years to do so. Another location which is a bit out of the way is in Duskwood. Nowadays it's a little more well known because I believe it's been used for a number of runes in Season of Discovery. It is a nice touch that they send you to some more hidden areas and have used them though. But since vanilla, players have been speculating who this memorial is for. After all, something this grand is usually for a person of grand stature in life, but nothing ever came to light about this from Blizzard or the players digging for information. However, during Cataclysm, Blizzard added a new NPC in front of this memorial, or perhaps more fittingly, a tomb, and this NPC was named the Unknown Soldier. Perhaps this was always the intention for this area as a secluded and quiet area in the zone of Duskwood, but the real-life reference to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is as clear as day. Next for you, I have riding in vanilla, because learning to ride in vanilla was completely different to any other expansion. First of all, in vanilla, training was the expensive part and the mounts themselves were cheap, and each individual race also had their own mount riding skill too. You didn't just learn how to ride once and it worked for all mounts. For example, dwarves had ram riding, orcs had wolf riding, trolls had raptor riding, and so on. And of course, learning how to ride a different race's mount meant you also had to get exalted with them, on top of having to pay the huge cost to learn their riding skill. This meant if you ever saw a player with a different race's mount in vanilla to their own, it meant something, as they would have really had to gone out their way to grind for that. There were also certain race restrictions on who could use mounts. Only dwarves and gnomes could pilot Mechanostriders, and on the Horde, Tauren could not learn to use raptors or undead horses. This was some pure RPG flavor from Blizzard, as races who are that towering and large just wouldn't fit onto those smaller mounts. But wait, there is more, as some mounts didn't need riding skill whatsoever, making them prestigious to see, as well as saving you some 900 gold or so for your epic mount. Those were the ZG mounts, the Azulian Tiger and Rizashi Raptor, and Death Charger's Reigns from Baron Rivendare in Strat Undead. There were also the AV Exalted mounts as well, and the AV Exalted mounts weren't exactly as prestigious or as rare because you could really get AV Exalted in the space of a weekend if you wanted to, and it was a good way to save a bunch of gold to get 100% speed mount as well. And finally, there is one mount in the game which is probably the rarest and least used mount in vanilla, simply because people don't realize that it exists, and that is the Black Stallion, which is exclusively available from a mount vendor in Menethil Harbour in the wetlands. The annoying thing here is there's no riding trainer, so when you hit level 40 on a human, you still have to go all the way over to Eastvale logging camp to train your riding, but then you'd have to come back here and fly up to Menethil Harbour and then buy your horse at this location. That's kind of why nobody ends up doing this. But hey, maybe the next time you hit 40 on your human in vanilla, go buy your riding, then come over here and get a horse which is gonna stand out. Next up, class trainers. Typically when you want to go to them, you go to your capital city because you know you're going to be able to find them there. But there are also a bunch of class trainers which are dotted around the open world. You have a Paladin trainer in Theramore, you have the Rogue trainer in Booty Bay, I'm sure we've all seen him, but the zone with the most hidden trainers is Ashenvale, which for some reason has two separate hunter trainers, and the most hidden one of them is just beyond the Shrine of Asina, called Alendar Lapidar, as well as the pet trainer Bolyon. They're in a small camp up a hill and are super easy to miss unless you have a bit of an eagle eye, pun intended I suppose. It's always nice to have training options in the world, and it might just save you a trip back to Darnassus, so don't forget they're there next time you're in Ashenvale. I've also got a bit of bonus information for the elves of this camp. The leatherworker supplier just next to them is the only place in the game to buy the herbalist glove pattern, which are a level 22 pair of gloves that increase your herbalism skill by +5. The Horde does not have an equivalent to this, so if you wanted to get them you'd have to buy them and then trade them through the neutral auction house to get hold of them. I do think it's quite nice having some bonus herb skill when you're training, especially paired with the enchant. It can make those level breakpoints just so much easier to get through. Of course they're leather though, so clothies won't be able to use them. This is typical vanilla RPG. Would you go out in real life wearing gloves made of cloth to pick flowers? Of course not, you'd wear something thicker, like leather. But that's just about everything today, just a few more secrets about the world of vanilla and hidden things that you may or may not have known about. Let me know if you found anything new, what you would have wanted to see here, and whether you want to see another video of this type. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all on the next one very soon.